Our family story begins on the frontier and in the prairie of Oklahoma, where the wind really comes rushing down the plain. And it's a place where farmers would do what they did by getting up in the morning on their tractors and working the farm and the land. And it was a special time for both sets of my parents. And when they came together, they didn't have a lot of money. And I grew up in a very modest environment. In my elementary years, I got to the place that I finally saw my first play, The Wizard of Oz. And it changed me because I knew I wanted to be a part of something theatrical, something cinematic. I was bit. I had this desire to be involved in film, and that's where I wanted to go. Well, by the time the 90s rolled around, I had a wonderful opportunity to work with Dr. Wendell Eastep in the 80s, who was at Council Road Baptist Church, and he started a media ministry. And I was the first media minister at that church, and then followed him to Columbia, South Carolina, where I produced programs for him. And there's where I got engaged with ESPN. I started working with them, and it was like my directing skills finally got to take over, and I began to do a lot of directing for a weekly program. I knew that it was time to go beyond, and I began to produce my own programming. I was involved in shooting workout with a famous star in the NBA, Brent Price. And that was really exciting because I knew when I got involved in creating the Golden Rule Sports programs, the basics of shooting and different projects, that I could put an underpinning of faith behind that. I got a door opened up at Nest Entertainment where I became vice president of that company, and they were doing the animated stories from the Bible, and we released a movie called The Swan Princess. And I thought, wow, this is so great. I'm finally getting to do animation. I'm getting to be involved at a studio executive level in film, and it was a fulfillment of something that I had always wanted to do. You know, as a child, you dream of a way you can take your imagination and you can put it onto film, and that was my heart. That was my desire. My life began turning around, and a door opened up for me to be involved with 2 motion pictures, Beyond the Gates of Splendor, a documentary, and a feature film called Into the Spear. Both were released with Fox, and those films changed my life, not just making the motion pictures, but really being involved in something that I knew would make a difference and would impact our culture. I really knew that was my destiny, and I began Veritas. This experience of starting Veritas, that I sat down and I began to think, what kind of films could we create? So we made a feature documentary called The Samaritan.
Romania is a repressive communist country which works to promote terrorism and instability around the world.
People forget the history of Romania, that it was initially allied with Hitler.
Communist dictatorships annihilated more than 100 million people worldwide.
We're in Romania shooting the film The Samaritan. True stories can impact people's lives. That's what we're trying to do. Touch people, impact their hearts, so that transformation can happen. It was about a man who was on a mission to just escape from Romania. And another man who happened to see a defector wanting a way out, and he risked his life and went behind enemy lines into a communist country to save his family. From that documentary, I was approached to be one of the directors on a film called Last Ounce of Courage.
One by one, we have lost the freedoms that our forefathers, our brothers in arms, and my son died for. No!
That film was so impactful, and it led me to the last film that we did called Through the Valley. Through the Valley is a documentary about the Rwandan genocide and 2 families and 2 fathers and their pursuit of how far would they go to try to save their daughters.
From Veritas Entertainment comes a true story about opening your eyes to the suffering of others. And when you do, you find healing yourself.
And then from there, doors began to open up, and There was a Messianic Jew named Kurt Landry that came up with a concept that I really was intrigued with called illuminations. Created that film for the purpose of exposing everyone to the Holy Land and to Jerusalem. Even recently, we have new doors opening up for My Journey to Paradise, which is a story about Cambodia and going back into the killing fields with a man named Dr. Hang Lim.
My father was captured. He died. He was starved to death. The jungle itself was full of landmines, communists, robbers, traps, bad people, poisonous snakes, tigers, and not many people that would go through it would come back out alive.
And that leads us to our new documentary about an orphan's crusade, where Lynn Ann Muse talked about the importance of what does it mean to grow up in an orphanage and how can foster care be improved, and to really be an advocate and an ambassador for this.
I advocate for children that have been abused, neglected, and abandoned.
We now have a brand new nonprofit called Veritas Mission Film Association. Veritas Mission Film Association is a nonprofit, and it is targeting helping create media missionaries around the world through education, inspiring productions of documentary and feature films that bring us to the point of truth through missionary and missions efforts. And it's encouraging people to get involved, to not just with their time and talent and resources, but with their whole lives. In fact, we have students that we're encouraging on the colleges where we serve on boards to try to encourage them to become media missionaries and to share their faith. This is the heart of Veritas, and we are honored today to be able to share this story with you and to encourage you to become a part of us. If you will, I believe it will change your life. Thanks for joining us.